This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Got three. It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And welcome to this Friday's. And this rabbi is smiling because we have, in fact, concluded the really long holiday season. It's been a tremendous year this month.
So you had a lot of beach time in this week?
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of time of looking at pictures maybe of beaches because a lot of them went into the videos. It was something new for me. I have never before done any kind of video of that kind of quantity. So it was kind of interesting.
So you spent your entire week in an edit room?
I did. I really was. I was...
Been there, done that.
Yeah. And it is what was going on. Without a question, let me put this little microphone in. I love technology, you know. So, anyway. So, not unlike Stuart, who says that he starts with one plan and ends with another one. I have to tell you, the amount of misinformation out there on masks is just mind-boggling. And the last caller on Stuart's call who said 85% of those who wear the mask caught COVID. That's not what the report said.
Well, it was close.
Not even.
I know.
Okay. What it said was that 85% of those who caught COVID, right? Not that 85% of mask wearers catch COVID, but that of those who caught COVID that they did in this study, which is one study, had worn the mask but took it off in family situations and restaurant situations and, took it off early. So you have to read the whole thing. You have to read the whole sentence. And it's just the scientist in me. Yes, I am a researcher. I am a scientist. I'm a psychologist, I'm an education person, and I'm a professor, I'm a rabbi, I'm all of those things. And I can't not use what I've been taught because it would be foolish not to.
So you can go to a restaurant, you just can't eat.
You can go to a restaurant, but what you're supposed to do, so there's two problems with the restaurant, right? One is coming in and touching everything. And I actually saw that way back in March, April, in the beginning of the shutdown, when not too many people had masks and not too many people wore gloves, and we don't see gloves being worn anymore, really. You just don't see them.
Very seldom. Very seldom.
And, in one way that's good for the environment because what people were doing is they were taking them off at their cars and throwing them in the parking lot.
You see the clerks, like at Publix and places like that, they're all wearing gloves.
Yeah, they will. Because they're handling your stuff. And that's who should wear a glove because most of the stuff is to protect everybody else from you. Right? So, right, like that, cough inside the mask.
Wait a minute, let me go get my mask.
The mask is not going to protect you from me. I have to protect you from me. That's my responsibility. Right? And, and the disease travels because of people not being careful in what they do toward others. That's what the mask is about, folks. Always has been. I've been saying that since the beginning. Now, I will say that I discounted it in the beginning myself, saying that, it was for the protection of others. It wasn't going to help you. But the reality is that is your responsibility. Right? That was, and I didn't push that in the beginning. But yeah. But anyways, I started to see. So I saw this person, and I think it was even the day that I bumped into you and Carol. was in a restaurant. The restaurants hadn't yet been closed, but it was very early in the COVID scare. And this woman was in there, and she's wearing a mask, and she's wearing gloves, and she's touching everything. I mean, she's like a little kid. She's got to touch this. She's got to pick up that. It's like, honey, if you touch everything with your mask and then touch your face, guess what? You're bringing it to your face.
Yep.
You know, and it's this basic lack of understanding of how things transfer that is just underneath this. Yes, it's an airborne. Yes, it lives for a while on some surface. It's not so much on clothes and paper. You know, it might be there in a plastic bag, but not much. And the other piece that I think that people don't understand about it is that it's not just one little teeny bit of it. You've got to get enough of the material to reach a critical mass. Kind of like Stuart was talking, that's a leadership thing, right? That one person doesn't get followers, but 3 will. Right, so the most important leaders are actually numbers 2 and 3. That's an old thing in leadership training.
Sure.
That if you don't have a close circle, right, it's not the person on the top, it's the people around them. Right? It's not the crazy with the vision, it's the crazies that support the person with the vision. That creates a movement, and that's nothing new. I'm reminded of, and I've actually shown that to my temple board. There's a great video of a guy dancing on a hill, and he sits there and he dances on the hill, and there's all kinds of people picnicking on the hill just before social distancing. And and he dances for a while, and nobody does anything. He's just dancing. Finally, somebody gets up and dances with him. Okay, well, now there's, as Stuart said, there's 2 crazies dancing on the hill. Finally, a third person does, and then eventually the whole hillside is dancing. Right? Because now that 3 people are doing it, it has reached a critical mass. And they validate the person with the vision. And validation, just as people are following, people look at ratings. It's the first question that if I say, oh, we need X, Y, Z, let's buy something or other for it. Let's say, okay, so I go to buy this microphone for my iPad. And first thing my husband said was, what's the peer rating on it?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He looks at that stuff? See, yeah. I never do. I just go for the brand I know.
Well, it's also a matter of the company. Is the company, the supplier, reliable? Are you going to get what you ordered? Are they going to give you a delay? Are they known for that? Are they not known for that? So there's lots of different parameters that go into shopping decisions. But yeah, there is a bandwagon appeal that, although it's a fallacy, in fact does work. So yeah, people are interesting. People are fascinating.
What amazes me is, we've got all these arguments about masks here, and thinking your little kids in China have grown up wearing them.
Yeah, my little kids.
And they don't even think about it.
Now, they have 5 or 6 or 7 of these, one to go with each outfit, one with,
Yeah.
They wear school uniforms in China. And some of them have the logo from their school on it, or they're in their school colors. And
yeah.
There's a tremendous sense of that kind of followership. It's promoted. And, it looks kind of cool when they're out doing exercises or something as a group. Or you see this little throng of them moving through. There's a great video of from South China. You can look. South China has an English channel because it's mostly Hong Kong and Kowloon and Shenzhen.
The big commerce areas.
The big commerce areas where a lot of people do speak English and a lot of foreigners are there, and so they have English media. And South China News is one of those. And
former British.
Yeah, former British. And you can find them on Facebook even. All right, Hong Kong. It's interesting, right? Because in most of China, the Chinese are not allowed out onto YouTube and onto Facebook. But in Hong Kong, they are. That's one of the leftovers from having been British. And so
maybe not for long.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes. And yeah. It's well, that's a whole nother issue.
That area is
Yeah.
going to get real testy.
It's going to get. It's interesting to see who's going to hang and who's going to leave Hong Kong. But that was the big question. I don't know, what was it? When was it that when China annexed it?
Was it 2014 maybe?
I don't think it was.
I don't know.
Okay, somebody with the news, with history, you can Google it. I don't have time to Google right now. But, tell us when it... but, there was a big question then how many people were going to leave, and some people did. A number of people pulled out of Hong Kong. Hong Kong has an incredibly large population, really, really huge. And, we'll see where it goes. There's a lot of questions in that area right now. And I have some it's kind of funny. Hong Kong has its own money still, has Hong Kong dollars. They don't use the yen or the yuan. It depends on where in China you are as to how it's pronounced. It's pronounced differently. They've got dialects too.
Well, it's like what? Peking and Beijing.
Yeah. Well, it's Beijing.
Yeah. Okay.
Beijing.
There you go.
But to a lot of ears, right, the B and the P are interestingly connected. In Arabic, there is only the B sound. There is no P sound. And
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's one of the things you learn over time. Native Arab speakers who don't learn to speak Hebrew don't have the P sound in their toolbox. And so they have to be taught it if they're learning another language that has it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know
that. So B's
that.
and P's are very similar. B, P. The big difference with the P, and the way you can test it, put a tissue in front of your mouth. P, it moves the tissue. B does not. P,
Okay.
B, right? It's the big difference is the amount of air that comes out of your mouth.
See, now you sound like our old voice coach.
Well,
Yeah, she
alliteration's
used to do
important.
stuff like that.
Yeah. It is important. Okay, so if you're going to be on Israeli TV,
Yeah.
you have to be able to distinguish between an aleph, which is truly silent, and an ayin. Hear the little in the back? That's the ayin. The ayin is I call it a hard silent for people, but it's almost a g. It's It's all the way in the back of the throat. And if you don't make that distinction, then you'll get a voice coach. Or you won't get the job.
Wow.
Yeah. So languages have sounds that we don't necessarily hear or do well with. The other one that Hebrew and, of course, German and a number of other languages have, and Arabic, and is the ch sound. As in loch lomond. Right? It's not loch lomond, it's loch lomond. So, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
So a lot of people turn the ch into a k.
Yeah, I
and-
think I would.
Yeah, some people make it into an H sound. That's actually closer. If you just do an H sound, it just sounds like you're dropping it rather than mispronouncing it. And in fact, so much so that the Reconstructionist, right, there's all these different kinds of Judaism, but inside the Reconstructionist prayer books, they use an H with a dot underneath it to symbolize the ch sound in transliteration.
Okay, now wait a minute. Do you have different forms of the Talmud?
The Talmud, no. The Talmud stays.
Okay,
The
but
Talmud is a tremendous collection of information.
but there are different denominations who, I guess, interpret the Talmud.
Well,
A little
I think
differently?
it's given different weights.
Okay.
So for some groups, they view everything through the lens of Talmud. Others look at Talmud as commentary, as something to tell us how people looked at it, but then we're invited to be ourselves.
That would not be
Orthodox.
Orthodox.
Yeah. The Orthodox uses the Talmud, calls the Talmud oral Torah. Okay. And they look at the written Torah through the lens of the oral Torah.
Literal.
What do you mean by literal?
Well, oh God, here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So they look at the stories that they've been taught, and they see Torah through it. Not unlike certain Christians who look at the plural form of God, right? Sometimes God is referred to as they. Imagine that, so it's not gendered. It is slightly gendered because it's a masculine plural, but that's a whole other. It's a gendered language. It doesn't have a neuter. They're working on creating it.
Well,
actually.
the Trinity would be 3.
I understand. But, that's not a Jewish concept.
No, I get
Right.
that.
And so the people who say to me, well, Jesus is talked about. No. Jesus is read into the text. And, are you free to do that? Of course you're a free human being. But it's not there. God is not talking to Jesus in the beginning as a separate entity. God is one. And I do believe that is what Jesus taught, but that's a whole nother, right? There's all kinds of the Jew and the Christian and the Jew and the Catholic and the whatever. Yeah. The priest, the rabbi, and...
I have to bring Father Alto in here with you. I think this could be fun.
We could have some fun. Father Alto is...
And what amazed me when you had the Muslim fella in here was some of his views. Of course, I had never heard them before. And it was like, wait a minute. Really?
Yeah.
The Virgin Mary and all the other stuff. I mean,
that's in Quran.
Wow.
But, it's like everything else. The people who think they know everything, right, who read a couple of snippets of what somebody tells them is in the Quran or not in the Quran, then they think they know the Quran. It's like there was, I'm in one of those neighborhood, whatchamacallits.
Groups.
Yeah, those little
the
groups
web.
on, the little want to be a Facebook supplement.
Yeah.
For your neighborhood thing, and somebody in it had posted some article from some far edge group, and it had a CDC report attached to it, but then it was saying almost the exact opposite of what the report did, but it attached the report as if to say, here's my reference.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was one of these, the claim on the report was something about that masks don't do anything or blah, 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 saying the CDC waffles back and forth. And it was, I think it was the report that was referenced with the 85% that gets misquoted all the time. And it was in that article. And if you read the CDC report, it was the CDC report over and over and over again said, wear your masks, be particularly careful in restaurants, bars, or even worse. Just because people tend to get very close and huggy. And I'll get back to that because that was the thing I was trying to talk about in the very beginning, and we didn't even get there, and we're 20 minutes in. But, they say, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance, over and over and over again. It is still the recommended way to try to control this virus and stop its spread. And so let's get back to the restaurant issue. The restaurant issue is not a problem if, say, Bill and I go to a restaurant, wear our masks into the restaurant, wear our masks until the food comes, take it off, eat, and then put our masks back on and walk back out. Then neither we nor those around us are as exposed if everybody was doing that. The problem becomes, I haven't seen Gene and Jerry for 6 months, so let's meet for dinner. And, then you sit across the table from them and you're laughing and talking. You're sharing germs with folks. Just because you're not doing it in your home doesn't mean that you're not exposing yourself if it's people that aren't in your immediate group. And so there's a lot of the stuff between the lines and between the cracks that's going into this. And unfortunately, that's part of what's happening in restaurants and other environments. I had a situation earlier, fortunately it was several months ago, and it did not turn into something, but where I was supposed to meet a person for lunch, and apparently either they had planned it or other people had called them or whatever it was. By the time we ended up in a restaurant eating lunch, was right when the restaurants were first opening again. And it was spaced, but there were 5 people at that table that I did not know.
Ooh. Yeah.
That had traveled, like some significant distance to meet with the person that I was meeting with. And they created this collective meeting. Now, as I said, fortunately, it didn't turn into anything. But, I was faced with, do I get up and be rude and say, no, I'm not going to have lunch with a group of people that I don't know where you've been? But, some of that happens.
Well, you could have gotten up with one of those little mini temperature things and taken everybody's temperature.
Well, we have one. We have one of those for the temple.
We've got one outside.
We have one of those
right
for the
here.
temple, and
Yeah.
we did use it for the high holy days for people who elected to come into the sanctuary, masked and distancing. And we had a very small number of people who did that. And it was a meaningful experience for them. It was wonderful for me to have a few people there. A lot of the service was pre-recorded. Now, that was done for a couple of reasons. One, we were going to Zoom, and quite candidly, I could not imagine somebody watching me as a little tiny figure in the Zoom. And normally in the Zoom, I'm this small figure.
Small box, yeah.
A small box.
Yeah.
Well, it's a small box, and I'm a small part of that small box. It's not like here where I'm face, where people have my whole face, or on the WPSL TV where people can see me.
Right.
And so I'm this little tiny figure moving in, and also for self-care, so that I'd not make myself more vulnerable if somebody walks in with it. But it also was a way of not having to sing loud. I could sing quietly because my voice was on the pre-recorded piece, and I sang with me, right? And I sang with Sharon, our cantorial soloist, right? So all of that went on.
You realize there was a rock and roll group that got in trouble for lip syncing.
I know. Well, I wasn't lip singing because you could see what was going on, and I wasn't pretending it was me. So
There you go.
in fact, sometimes I sang harmony to myself. So yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And that's how when there are these videos out there where it's 4 and 5 versions of you singing over and over and over again. And clearly, the way those are created, folks, is that somebody records it once and then sings to themselves and then sings and sings and sings and puts it back in. And if it doesn't sync, they redo it.
The editors, that's where the editors are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, what it did was we weren't belting out and taking those deep singing breaths and that deep singing projection where you're throwing it. And and I was masked and shielded, and I was shielded. I had a shield on because the people who watch my lips to hear, right, who lip read, can't lip read through the mask.
Yeah, I've got the dilemma with IRSC, and actually somebody suggested, it was a Daytona coach, that I use the plastic shield rather than a mask.
Yeah, and there's a couple of differences. I use the one that puts on like glasses, and I wear my glasses, but it comes in, it's behind my glasses, and it sits right in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you how. I'll even bring one next week if you need, because I've got spares.
These are the big shields,
Yeah,
right?
the big shields that come over your face, and it goes all the way down to here.
Yeah.
And I have coughed behind. Folks, you've listened to me on the radio. You know that I cough. Every so often, in an hour, I'll cough. I've got a slight chronic cough from my thank you nasal drip that I've had for decades. And but I have coughed inside the shield, and all I have to do then is clean the shield, and I've got enough warning with it that I pull it down and hold it to me, but there's not much gap anyway. But
I just have to see how it's going to work with the sports headset setup.
It should not be a problem because it's just here, like your glasses are, and then the shield is over your face and comes in here.
Yeah, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, it's not the one that goes all the way around that's sitting out here. It's actually much closer to your face.
Interesting.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will hook you up with how to get those.
We have never really seen anything quite like COVID. I mean, it's just doing all sorts of weird things now, and
It's mutating faster than you can shake a stick at it.
Yeah, and so what I've been hearing, on the television is like, okay, they may have a vaccine for this thing, but by the time the vaccine gets out,
it's going to be mutated.
It may have mutated way past that one.
Well, for example, I know some people here on the Treasure Coast that have had COVID multiple times. And they've been reinfected.
Multiple times?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
With different symptoms each time.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Right, so the first time, this one person that I'm thinking of, the first time that they had it, they had the shortness of breath and the fatigue and the fever. No, I take that back. The shortness of breath, the aches, and the fatigue. And the second time they got it, they had the fever and the sore throat and the cough. Right, so it's got so many different symptoms, and we're already in strain H or I or something like that by now. It's mutating very quickly, and it's affecting mink something fierce. There have been a number of mink farmers that have had to cull their herds and have lost a lot of mink out in the west part of the U.S. There are mink growers who've paid dearly for COVID coming into their herds.
Wow. I was watching a report on Fox Business, I think it was, this doctor talking about how, you could get it several times, but that the heart may be affected one time,
Mm-hmm.
the liver might be affected another time, the kidney a third time.
It's going to attack different parts of your system.
Yeah.
Apparently. Yeah.
It's crazy.
So it's a very contagious virus, and do some people have natural immunity? Probably, but we'll never, we won't know who for a long, long time. I won't say never, but it'll take science quite a bit to figure out who, what, where.
Unless you're the president who can make a miraculous recovery.
We're not going there. I don't wish anybody ill. I mean, I wish nobody would suffer from COVID. Port St. Lucie County's gone over 300 deaths already. That's notable. It's enough that there is a real serious blip there. We need to be careful. Here was an interesting piece that I had a reason to look at that's kind of strange. But I was reading a report that said traffic accidents were down, but not traffic fatalities.
Huh?
Isn't that interesting? Traffic accidents are down in number, have been down in number, but the fatalities have not been. So it's the worst accidents that have continued to occur.
Boy, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was real. I didn't have time to really, really look at it. Russ, line 1. Thank you for calling, Russ. You're on with Rabbi Shafir at Ask a Rabbi.
I'm just curious, aren't you describing with the multiple stages and varieties of this the futility of trying to defend against it? Wouldn't Sweden's method of herd immunity be a better route? I mean, you've just literally stated this thing is never going to go away. You can have 7 or 8, 10 times. So the fact that no mask will ever protect you from yourself, you're flat out reinforcing the herd immunity
Russ,
concept.
The mask is not for yourself.
Well, you just said
the mask
the same
is for
person
everyone
had 4
else.
different versions of this cold.
Well, first
right?
of all, I didn't say 4. I said multiple.
Well, whatever. Multiple versions.
But
well, you cannot protect yourself from yourself.
Yes, you
so
can.
This thing's going to run its course no matter who's president.
I didn't
this
say
thing
it's.
is
I
going
didn't.
to run its course and get every single person that has ever walked the face of this earth. You can't stop it.
Okay.
It's It's
Russ?
You know what happens when you section yourselves off? It's like when the Spanish went into South America and wiped out entire tribes with a simple cold. That's what happens when you section off and barricade yourself against exposure.
Okay, Russ, you have mangled so many different streams of things. And I appreciate your call. So for those on Facebook, and Russ, realize they don't hear you because I hear you in my headset, so they don't hear you. It's not broadcast into the studio. What Russ was saying is that the mask can't protect you from yourself, and that's true. The mask does not protect you from you. The mask protects everyone else from you. And it is important.
But does it? Has it protected anybody?
Yes.
Do you know this for a fact, that people that wear a mask cannot give anyone else this thing? You don't know that. If this thing were so simply stopped, how come so many people are still getting it?
Because so many people, Russ asked why, if the mask helps, are so many people getting it? Because so many people say the mask doesn't do anything and they don't wear it. Even when the mask was mandated and carried a criminal fine.
Sweden isn't completely wiped out? How come not one single living person is in Sweden? I mean, your logic is illogical. Sweden's not all dead. Every single one of them didn't die because no one wore a mask.
And Russ, are you willing to be one of the people who dies, or have your loved ones die?
I would, if I knew anybody that had this, I would go smooch with them until I knew for a fact I was exposed. That's how certain I am. I'm not a sickly human being. I've eaten right and exercised. I want this virus, so I know I have the immunity. I don't want to have to trust some chemical company to protect me. I don't want the government to protect me.
Russ, you say you're fit and you won't get the disease badly. That's what you're trying to say.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm not worried about it. If I've got to live the rest of my life in a closet wearing a mask, I would rather not be alive.
Okay, it's not... Okay, Russ, you have about 17 different fallacies in your comment. It's not a choice between living in your closet for the rest of your life and taking reasonable precautions of wearing a mask to protect other people after you've smooched the person who has COVID. It's to protect everybody else. It's a courtesy to you. That's why the places that have more of these kinds of diseases don't have the numbers, because they do curtail it.
Sweden didn't wear any masks.
If I knew more about...
No one was sectioned off. Explain it.
Russ, I can't, because I'm not familiar enough with what Sweden is and doing.
They have probably the exact same amount of death rate as everyone else, because this thing can't be stopped.
Okay.
You wear a mask and someone pulls a mask away for half a second, there went the whole point of wearing a mask. People stop and get a cigarette. People stop and get a drink, whatever. You can't stop this thing. It's going to run its course. Why fight it?
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate it.
It's a waste of time.
Greatly appreciate your comments about how COVID's going to get everybody eventually anyway. But I will flip.
Russ just needs to go to Gainesville and go to a frat house. He'll get it.
Yeah, there's that, or go out, go to Daytona in spring break. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, or go to a rose garden.
Yeah. You want to go to the Rose Garden ceremony next week?
Thank you for calling, Russ. Appreciate it. Everyone, of course, is entitled to their view. And sometimes people say to me, I don't talk about this or I don't talk about that. And the reason I don't talk about them is because I won't talk about something until I've actually looked it up enough that I know I'm not getting a slant view. I'm not getting, it's like that article that I talked about that claimed to reference the CDC report, and then totally misquoted it, twisted it, turned it, took one little bit. That's called propaganda, when you take one little sliver of truth and you spin a whole story on it. Right? We call it spin now, but that's propaganda. That's what it is. That's how it works. You take something so that an honest person has to pause for a second and try to figure out how to parse the little teeny bit of truth out of all the stuff that's around it. I don't know the situation in Sweden. I don't know it well enough. I would have to do a couple of hours of really significant reading to see what's going on. I would guess, among other things, that Sweden probably has less obesity than we have in the U.S. I would guess that they have less smokers. I would guess they have less drug users than we have here in the U.S. And those are comorbidities that are significant.
Probably less diabetes.
And they probably have a lot less diabetes. But I'll give you this, the common cold. I don't get very many colds. Part of the reason for that, I'm sure, is that I am a teacher and that I have been exposed to it when I did face-to-face classes. I haven't done face-to-face classes since IRSC went virtual. So the classes have been virtual.
Are you going face-to-face second semester?
I'm not. I don't know yet. I have not gotten my second semester schedule yet.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see where it is. What they assign me. I do what I'm assigned.
So are all your students at IRSC pretty healthy?
They seem to be. There have been a couple of positive students, and the college has dealt with it very, very well. And the classrooms don't look like they did, and students are very well spaced, and there's all kinds of protections, and they come in and they do sanitize. And I think that without that, I think that IRSC would have been some hot spots, but IRSC has done an amazing job of keeping that under control. Other groups are not. I mean, we see all kinds of businesses where if one or two of the people that are critical to the business contract the COVID, that the business goes out of business because they can't do it while people are in the hospital and sick. And so here's the piece, right? We were talking earlier about China and Japan and those places. They wear a mask. They wear a mask very easily, very commonly. They wear it in school. They are much better, and they are, particularly the Japanese, are very meticulous on cleanliness. They just do a whole lot better job than we do.
I saw some video out of Singapore on Bloomberg, and I mean, there was nobody without a mask.
Yeah, they're very, very good about it. I mean, and even Beijing is having a challenge again with it. This is a serious virus. It's a serious virus. The biggest issues are still, and going to continue to be, if people protect others from themselves. And it's not living in a closet. I don't live in a closet. I'm here in the studio. I'm not in a closet. And, but I don't take unnecessary risks, and I don't expose people to me. I wear a mask into the building, and I wear it out of the building. So when I'm I take it off so that you can see me when I'm here in front of the camera / iPad / phone / all
those slashes over there, yes.
All those slashes of things, yeah, in front of the technology, and also because it does muffle sound, and it does muffle sound, and that's
what I'm worried about for the basketball.
Right, that's why I wear the shield, because it doesn't muffle as bad, and it's a challenge. I think that what it really does take is some really common sense. If everybody did a really good job of washing their hands and covering their mouth and face, I think the incidence would go way, way down. I think that if you have, if it's, how can I say this? If you can get exposed to a little bit of it, it might work to achieve immunity. But how do you get exposed to just a little bit? Right? That's the key, without getting enough of it to actually contract the disease.
What is going to be interesting to watch is if and when they get the vaccine. There are a lot of people out there who do not want their kids vaccinated. I mean, that's been around for a long time, that movement, and you have to wonder what happens when the vaccine comes out for this.
Yeah, there's going to be anti-vaxxers. Unfortunately, there's as much as there is knowledge, there's an amazing volume of anti-knowledge, right? And I know I've talked about it. Like, there is no such thing as cold energy. You don't get cold because the cold penetrates. You get cold because the BTUs in you get sucked out of your body and away from you. And so you feel chilled where you are no longer as warm, but it's not the cold energy penetrating you. It's your warmth leaving. Energy rolls downhill. It goes from hot to cold. And so thank you, Anne, for calling. We have Anne on line 1. This is Rabbi Shafir.
Yes. Hello, Rabbi. I'm 78 years old, and I tell you, the wearing of the mask, for years I've seen the Chinese wear a mask, and I don't want the United States to be like that.
You don't want the United States to be like China and take safety measures?
Wearing a mask all the time. Even my sister, she's 85 years old. She lives in Arizona. She's a retired RN. And I guess, us older folks just don't like having to wear a mask. I do wear it because, I don't know, but as soon as I get out of the store, I can't wait to take it off. And I always picture all these years the Chinese people wearing a mask. And I'm like, this cannot go on in the United States.
Okay, well, thank you, Anne. So Anne says that she doesn't want to look Chinese and wear a mask. Am I phrasing it right? Summarizing it? That somehow it's less to wear a mask and be courteous because the Chinese do it? I don't know if
I just don't like, I'm sorry. No, it's just, I don't like the look.
Okay, you don't like the look. So liking a look or not liking a look is a function of style. What if I don't like wearing a blouse and a bra? Is that okay?
No, of course not. Of course not. But anyway, like I say, it's just the way I feel with the mask.
And I understand it's a change for you, Anne, and change becomes ever harder the older we get. I agree.
Oh, that's for sure.
Okay, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't still try to. So I'll give you a lesson learned from my trees in a hurricane. That you either have to be able to totally withstand it, or you need to be able to go with the flow and bend. And it's the trees that bend that survive the hurricane.
Okay, well, I will let you go.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for calling again.
Not sure she agreed with you, but
well, that's one of the things that we're entitled to in America. We're entitled to not agree.
You bet. Yeah.
And as
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So Carlo, or is it Carlo or Carlos on line 3?
Carlos.
I'm sorry.
Carlos.
Carlos.
CARLOS. Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I got
Thank
a question for you.
Okay. Thank you for calling. By the way, what's your question?
And then I'm going to hang up just to hear you because my phone is out of whack. If China knew in November of last year that this was contagious and they shut down Wuhan and they didn't let nobody from Wuhan go nowhere in China and vice versa, they didn't let nobody in China travel to Wuhan, they had a big shutdown. But they let everybody keep on coming from another country back and forth from China and Wuhan. If China knew this was so contagious back in November, is there any way that we could send them a huge invoice for all the damage that it caused? I'm just going to hang up and listen to it.
Okay, Carlos asked if China knew that it was contagious, can we send them an invoice because it was not contained? It doesn't, the problem is not the folks that they knew. China did an amazing job of shutting it down. Yes, they did massive testing of the folks in Wuhan when it first started to surface. By the time it had started to surface, people had traveled to and from carrying the virus in their bodies. And It wasn't huge numbers, but it was enough. And obviously some of it got to Italy and some of it got to the U.S. After President Trump put in the travel ban, 40,000 people came in from China to the U.S. after the ban. So, we can talk about a ban, but it wasn't total. It's never been total. And I'm sure that some people in China traveled, and I'm sure that some people disobeyed their government as well, at peril to themselves and at peril to those that they touched.
See, Carlos has got a cool idea. Why don't we invoice him for our $22 trillion debt that they own? Wipe it out clean for the virus.
Good try. Good try.
Sick.
It's you sit there and people don't realize how much China. We wouldn't have the technology that we have today. Most of right the iPad and the phone and probably this microphone. I know that the microphone that's on here all came from China.
Sure. Yeah. Well, your Apple products were probably built.
Apple absolutely needs China. In fact, a lot of stocks need China. China is supplying food into our food chain, folks. So is Mexico. And the vectors, the ways that the disease travels and the way that goods travel is not always a straight line. So, for example, we just came out of the holiday of Sukkot, and this is a wonderful example of the ongoing trade, the Silk Road. It's called the Silk Road because China controlled silk thousands of years ago. Because silk was used for fishing, it was used for fabric, it was used for many, many things. And China guarded the secret of how it was made for decades, at least decades, to control trade. It's not, we can sit here and say what would be noble and what would be good, but the reality is that some business people will always self-interest first. And it's hard to teach some people, unless we can get them as very young children, it's really hard to teach people to not be self-centered. The older you get, the more self-centered people tend to be. And that's just a human fact. We can combat it, but we've got to combat it with children. It's much harder to get adults to own up to needing to change. Witness some of the other calls that we've had over time. It's very hard to get people to change. People think that the way they've been doing it, one of the comments from one of my colleagues was that in front of the ark it should say, "We've never done it that way." Right. Yeah. People don't like change because change represents uncertainty. It requires you to readjust some of your opinions. If you want to look down on somebody and now you've got to be like them, that's a challenge to your judgmentalism. It's a whole ramification. It's a whole bunch of stuff. So, China did what they could to curtail it. They did a lot of stuff that America never did. They put field hospitals in. They put hotels in to hold people. They did very quick testing. They did massive testing. They were able to isolate who had the disease and who didn't. And they did all of that very, very quickly. And I know from some of my students that healthcare providers were gathered from all over the country and sent to Wuhan to fight it there. And they had to quarantine before they could come back. And I'm sure that some of them, they were wearing hazmat suits. I've seen the pictures. They're not hiding it. It's just that usually American press doesn't like to cover it. But anyway, so thank you for that call, Carlos. And I now have Bob on line 1, and I got the 5-minute warning, Bob. So.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
I had a question. It's something you just said. You said that China did an amazing job of shutting down the virus, but they shut it down within China. They didn't shut down travelers coming out. President Trump did the ban, and then other countries followed suit. But I had a question what you meant by that they did an amazing job of shutting it down. I don't agree with that.
What they did is they did an amazing job of shutting it down for their own country. And no, China is not the leader of the free world. China is the leader of China, and they shut it down for China. And they did it at tremendous price. They went into shutdown in January, in the middle of their biggest festival. They did it in what the Chinese call Chinese Christmas. They did it right at the beginning of Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year is a month-long festival. It is called the largest human migration on the planet because it is a Chinese custom to visit your parents and your other relatives. Everybody gets together, and China shut it down. They shut down Chinese New Year this year. That's incredibly
I
huge.
wanted your clarification on what you were saying because, in my opinion, they shut it down for themselves, but they didn't shut it down for the world, and the world is where we have the problem.
Well, in one way,
that was just my opinion.
Okay.
I just it's all over, but I think it would have been a lot less if, they said, okay, nobody can, besides just travel in China, nobody can go anywhere else.
Well, I think that they, for the most part, they didn't let people into China, and travel within China was not happening. That happened very, very quickly. That happened in January. But the virus most probably, anything you read that's of any scientific worth tells you that the virus was already on its way out of China in November. And we don't even know exactly, people say Wuhan is the center of it, and it probably was. But if it hadn't broken out in Wuhan, it would have broken out somewhere else. And it's not
Well, I'm sure, it would have been worldwide, no matter what. But
yeah.
I think it would have been a lesser degree if China would have thought of the world instead of just China. We were on a tour to Israel in December, and I said, we could have got it easily, everything that was going on, but thank goodness everybody in our group was fine. But I just wanted to see where you were coming from on that. I appreciate it.
So thank you, Bob. So Bob just said that he traveled. He was actually in Israel in December. I was on a cruise in December. I was very, very lucky. So yeah, it was out and about in November. And they did shut it down. Their responsibility is to their country. America hasn't shut it down for Americans. We didn't do anywhere near what China did. They bit the bullet, and they bit it hard, and they shut it down in their country. They're having a reflux, too, because they started to open it up and let people who've had American touch, and we're bringing the virus back around. So anyway, thank everyone for calling. This has been incredible. And this is Rabbi Shafir for Ask a Rabbi. Stay safe. Please do wear your masks out of courtesy for others. Wash your hands. That's even more important. Wash your hands. Keep your hands away from your face until you've washed them. Not with your tongue. Thank you.
Okay, got it.
Anyway, have a great Friday. I have to mention it real quickly. I'm going to steal a second here. Plant sale in November, the Sunday, November 8th, right after the election. Watch for more details.
WPSL, Port St. Lucie.